Konbanwa. It is Antoine, and I am back with a video. So I'm going to really use this video as opportunity with you some tips and some ideas and some suggestions if you're going to make the move to Japan. Just certain things or just certain things that you can be aware of. Again, it is a very different country from most countries. Things are just different, and you're going to hear me say the word different a lot because the best way I can explain, everything that is going on. But yeah, but honestly, once you get through the culture things, the differences, and the other stuff that I will talk about, Japan is still a cool country. But again, it is not for everybody, and it has a lot of really deep issues, and all countries do, but I don't know. Like, I'm still at that point. I love Japan with my heart and soul. I just don't know how to explain it. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So, I feel like the very first thing, if you're going to make the move to Japan, whether it be for work or for school, make sure it's something that you can do. Again, even with me, I always wanted to go to Japan. A little bit about myself. It has been my dream. I studied Japanese for 7 years and I did all these things. I learned about the culture to the point where you could even consider I'm Japanese, even though, my skin color is Japanese. I'm not black, you thought. But all seriousness aside, um, make sure this is something that you want to do. Even with me, I still get very homesick, especially with all of the crap that's going on. It's ridiculous. But with everything that's going on, I get more and more homesick, and I do miss my family. Even my family's very small. I miss my friends. I miss a lot of things about where I am from. So again, and it is just a giant leap because I'm well. It's like you're basically here by yourself, and you have to basically start everything from zero with new people with a whole nother language that I guarantee you not even Japanese people will understand. The only person who understands it is me. I'm amazing. I'm just like, but seriously, like make sure that's something that you want to do. Make sure that you're able to be content with the language barriers and just really meeting new people and new interesting characters because again, that's going to be the biggest. Step number two, it is a long process. So it is nothing easy about shifting from one country to another. There's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of paperwork that comes with it. So please, if you're going to make this move, make sure you got all your paperwork together. When I made the move, I didn't have anything, and I literally was scrambling, and I only had like 2 weeks to get all my paper in with one job. So you're gonna need like a lot of things. You're gonna need like a passport. You're gonna need like driver's license. You're gonna need your birth certificates. You're going to need, basically a lot of important. You're gonna need your social security card. You're going to need a lot and a lot and a lot of important things when making this move. It's a whole logistic process. Again, it is very strenuous. It can be very stressful. All the way until you actually start moving into Japan, it's going to be very rough. It's exciting, but in terms of when you get your plane trip and your plane ticket and your certificate of eligibility. So let me explain a little bit about what's going to really happen. So depending on how you do it, okay, you would have to go to like the consulate of Japan at some point wherever you're from, right? So in America, I had to go to the consulate because that's the only way you can get your COE, which technically is your certificate to get your visa. It is usually assigned by whatever company or maybe even school that you are going to go in, like into Japan with. So they're going to give you the certificate of eligibility, which is going to be what you need to get your visa, which is going to be what you need to get your Junin card, which is basically your residence card, and that's what you're going to be using to basically basically be able to live in Japan without really much problems thereof. So again, it's a very long process. So just have your paperwork prepared. Make sure you know what you need, and make sure you're very proactive about it because you don't really have a lot of time, especially with a lot of jobs. They hire like that, and I almost lost my job because I did not have the proper paperwork at that right time. Number three, be an English teacher. It sounds very corny, but let me thoroughly explain why being an English teacher is probably the best way to get into Japan. Now, you can find other ways to get into Japan. You can go really by school. I wish I really would have went to school, and I'm actually thinking about going to school in Japan. because I really think school is just for me. If you really want to meet people, I think that's a great way. Now you can do it by English teaching or whatever that you're doing, but I really think if you really want to meet people, school is always just a great place to really meet new and interesting people. So I definitely would recommend. But the reason why being an English teacher is so great is because a lot of companies, you know, with the if they're hiring from people from America or whatnot, they're more likely are going to have your back all the way through. They will become your supporters and your guarantors for everything into for the process of you staying and working in Japan. Well, they have no choice. So they're gonna help you. They're gonna help you get your visa. They're gonna help you get your driver's license. They're gonna help you get, your Jumin Kado, your health insurance. They're gonna guide you through everything, especially if you don't know Japanese. They're gonna help you guide you through every single process. It's also a really good way to really get used to the language and culture and how really people do things because being in a Japanese school, they do things a lot differently. And it's very amazing because teachers do things differently, but they all have a different way of doing everything. And a lot of teachers take pride into their students and into their work. So you got to really keep that in mind as well as you're really interacting with a teacher because they may have a own set way and it ain't not your fault, but it's their way, and so you just have to respect that, and that is respect will get you a long way. But it's really good to see the culture and the people, and just how really I feel like if you're going to get a first-hand basis about how Japanese do things, definitely a school will probably be the best place to start. We're working with people now. I really do feel like a college or like just a high school even. I think that's a really great way to meet people because kids definitely just love anything that is very interesting and very more than adults, which is honestly sad to say. I don't really get many looks from adults, but I get a lot of looks from children, and that's just because they always are very curious, very joyful little souls. So yeah, again, I would suggest just being an English teacher. I think that is one of the best ways to do it. And if you become an English teacher, you can find other work. Like most of the jobs that you would find in Japan will need you to be living in Japan before you find a job. Once you get through the basics, you may not like being an English teacher, and that's fine. It's not for everybody. So I would suggest just finding work somewhere else, fulfill your contract, find work somewhere else, and then just move on from there. But definitely, it's easier to find a job in Japan when you already have a job. Most places will require you to live in Japan and be working in Japan, or will give you another job. So just keep that all. And honestly, the last thing of this video, which will probably be the long segment. So I'm just gonna be honest with you. I feel like this pertains to all people, but I feel like more people or more types of people will experience this more than others. Well, the fourth thing is obviously just to be aware that Japan has a lot of dark things, and some of it is swept under the rug, some of it is not. So, and Japan being a country, they do tend to try to sweep a lot of dark things under the rug. So Japan is not without its issues. But even with its issues, I do still feel like it's a better place to live than America. But again, that's a whole other logical, theoretical lesson for another day. But for right now, just know that Japan has a lot of dark things with it, and I will go to say this as well. I don't think it will be much of an issue, but you might experience some forms of prejudice or racism. And that can be as a white person, as a black person, as any race. Japan is very scared of change, which is very, very true in a lot of areas. So things that are very new or interesting, especially with adults, can be very scary. Again, I can make another video about that, about my experiences with that going forward. But honestly, if you're going to be working in Japan or as a foreigner, you already have the ball for it against you. Most Japanese people, especially if they're working with you, they're very kind and they're very friendly. Some Japanese people are very scared. They don't really know how to interact with foreigners. You would probably be the first foreigner that they've probably seen in a long time. Especially if you know Japanese, you will probably, I would keep your Japanese to yourself, but that's a whole nother video. Some people also just don't know English and they feel very embarrassed by that, so they tend to not talk to you because they don't really know English very well. There's a lot of very culture language barriers. Like I'm telling you right now, I know literally N2 level Japanese, and it's very hard for me to communicate with Japanese people. And that's just a lot because of just because I know the language, they don't know English, and it feels really weird to them. Some people are just straight up racist, and I've experienced a lot of racism, and a lot of these looks and whatnot. As I have lived and traveled in Japan, it's very hard for some Japanese people to get the concept that I speak Japanese, and even in schools, I've often had to speak enough Japanese until at one point they just had to accept it. And so just keep all this in mind. Like you, especially as a black person, um, you can probably will experience a lot of racism if you come to Japan. It's not enough where I would say don't come, but um, racism is racism. And again, I can talk about this whole thing about prejudice, racism, stereotypes, but that literally will be like a 3 hour like lecture, that I can really spend on that. But um, racism has many different shapes and many different forms. And just be aware that those forms are very different in terms of when you're living in Japan. So certain things may seem a little weird or odd, especially as African American. And just be aware that, um, yeah, like just be aware that this stuff could happen. And I definitely have experienced like a lot of racism. I've been turned down to restaurants. I speak Japanese and they say English to me. Some people give me weird looks. Some people will don't even want to be bothered with me. Um, I've experienced a lot of these things, but again, those are not the entire country, and there are many people who are very nice and very kind. Japan is a very good country, so again, you got to juggle the good and the bad. But if you're not a big fan of racism or prejudice, it might not be the country for you. So I would just say, just be aware that like it does happen, and it's not just with black people, and it's with white people. I've seen white people do it too. But again, I will always say that it's different, and that's going to be the key word with this. It's very different. Like just because a white person could experience racism from a Japanese person doesn't mean that it's the same type that you would experience. And it's always going to be different. And your race will play a role in whatever you do pretty much in your life. And if someone told you otherwise, then I would not listen to that person. No one's gonna really say that like because you're this, you don't get this. That is not what racism is at all. We have just evolved from that. Racism is just like everything else. It just changed. It just got different. So your race will play a role in pretty much whatever that you do. Even with jobs and interacting with people. And interacting with people is one of the hardest points for me. And and there are many factors for that as well, and not just race. But just know that like as a foreigner, you are very different, and it's hard for Japanese people to cope with being different. Now, not all. Now, many are very curious and very interested, and they want to get to know you. But there are many. It's very scary for them, and it's just they're just not there yet. So just keep that in mind. Don't get depressed or sad if something happens or you don't understand why it happens, because it'll happen. And again, just take the good and the bad. Sometimes the stuff that happens to you will probably happen to another Japanese person even as well. So like I've had this where I thought one guy was just mad at me, but he had that same type of personality. But again, it's always going to be different in terms of interacting with other people. But just know and keep in mind that when you're moving here or you want to really live here and whatnot, just keep in mind that, especially as a black person, I'm really speaking for black people. It's di- it's an it's a lot. It's a lot. It's not enough to where I would give up, but it's enough to where it shouldn't happen. And that's ultimately where the thing is too. Now, again, you can find great friends and great people, and there are people who will be very curious about you, and that's true. But sometimes, when you go to a restaurant or when you're just walking about, it might happen. I got pulled over by the police for literally no reason. Like just literally just no reason. They thought I didn't speak Japanese, and they asked me for my card, and they was like, "Oh, we're very sorry." So just keep that. With that being said, that is the end of this video. I hope this video is very helpful for you. I do plan to make more videos like this in the future. Of course, more Japanese videos and more stuff like that too. Again, what to just look out for, what you should prepare for. Again, if you're really curious about Japan and this is where you want to be, I definitely recommend you hitting the like and subscribe button, because definitely, whatever I can prove it to you. Like, I'm like as fluent as they can come, in Japanese. 上手じゃないですけれども、毎日毎日頑張ります。So, with that being said, I thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful for you. Like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.